People assume AI bias should outrage us. Just remember the public outcry in 2018 when Amazon's hiring algorithm was biased against women. But research suggests we weren't as outraged as we would have been if humans had made the same decision. Bigman and colleagues argue that we see algorithms differently than humans. Unlike people, algorithms don't feel pain or pleasure, they can't think, plan, or regulate themselves. And since they lack these mental capacities, they don't have personal prejudices. To feel outrage, we typically need to believe someone is intentionally discriminating, and that discrimination is often driven by motives such prejudice. Since algorithms don't have that kind of motivation, we should feel less outrage towards them. To test this, the researchers told participants about a tech company's hiring process, which ended up in almost no woman being hired. One group was told that the HR specialist screened the resumes, while another learned that the algorithm called Sigma Evaluate did the screening. Participants were asked whether the HR specialist or the algorithm disliked women, didn't like to hire them, or was sexist. This measured perceived prejudice. Researchers also gauged how outraged the participants felt about the discrimination. The result? The algorithm was seen as less motivated by prejudice than the HR specialist, and participants felt less moral outrage about the actions of the algorithm. They also saw the discrimination by the algorithm as less intentional. Further tests revealed that less perceived discrimination led to less moral outrage. But maybe the outrage wasn't directed at the algorithm because it was directed at the company using it. In a follow-up study, the researchers measured outrage towards the company at two time points. First, after the participants learned whether a human or an algorithm screened the resumes, and again after learning about the discrimination. When the company used an algorithm, the participants were more outraged at the company compared to when it used a human to screen the resumes. But when they learned about the discrimination, the increase in outrage was higher when the company used human to screen the resumes. Additional tests show that the lower outrage towards the algorithm was driven by lower perception of prejudiced motivation. What about when an algorithm promotes gender equality instead of discriminating? If we judge algorithms as lacking intent, then we may not only have algorithmic outrage deficit, but also algorithmic praise deficit. To test this, the participants read two scenarios. One where the company was discriminating against women, and one where it promoted gender equality. The decision maker was either the HR specialist or the algorithm. The results? The participants had less anger or blame when the algorithm discriminated compared to when the human discriminated, but when the algorithm promoted equality, participants also were less likely to praise it. Further studies revealed that the more people knew about AI, the less they were outraged by algorithmic discrimination compared to human discrimination. This wasn't because they didn't think algorithms can be biased, but because they didn't see them as having prejudices. In another follow-up study, the participants were told that the algorithm was programmed either by egalitarian or sexist programmers. When the participants believed the algorithm was programmed by sexist developers, they were just as outraged as when the human was making the decision. But when the programmers were described as egalitarian, the outrage was lower. In a follow-up study where the algorithm was described in human-like terms, like having preferences and emotions, people saw them as having more prejudice, and that led to higher moral outrage. But when they were described in mechanical terms like supercomputers, the perception of prejudice was lower, and so was the moral outrage. So, the takeaway: to feel moral outrage, we need to see the wrongdoer as having motivation, and by default, we don't see algorithms this way. So, when an AI makes a bad decision, we tend to direct our outrage towards the company using it, not the AI itself. So, who should we blame when an AI makes mistakes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching!